It's really only masking the problem that's underneath, but it's healing at the moment, and it's getting better.
We'll talk about what the process is. Now, Maurice Collins, you come across people all the time in your surgery. How would you characterise how they feel about their hair? Because people who have plenty of hair just don't worry about it. They don't think about it.
That's correct, Pat. And for people with hair, they don't really understand the problem. But when somebody is losing their hair, and it's an important part of their self-image, then it can be absolutely devastating. And I have man-sized tissues in my surgery, and they're used regularly.
Really?
Both men and women cry about their hair loss, and it can be very devastating.
And you have described to us some of the strategies that men will use, say, in a restaurant, so that the waitress will not be able to look down on the bald bit up here.
I had one man in recently, and he always books the last seat in the aeroplane. I had another man in who he goes into the restaurant beforehand, checks it out for the lighting and sees what table is in the corner. He'll select that, book that, and then he'll sit in the corner with his back so not even the waiting staff can see his hair loss. And it can totally preoccupy them. And it's a fantastic leveler, Pat. It affects all strata of society. I have absolutely every strata of society you can think of who have been affected by their hair loss.
Yeah. What about women more than men? I mean, men, it's part of the aging process for many men. It's in the genes. But women do not expect to lose their hair. And young people certainly don't expect maybe to be bald maybe by the age of 30, 32, 33.
Absolutely correct. For women, it's less socially acceptable, and it can be more devastating to them. But a lot of people don't understand that as regards hair loss, the sex doesn't really make any difference. Men are just as upset about their hair loss. Now, not every man is upset about their hair loss, but the vast majority of them are.
Yeah, some men it suits, you have to say. When you see them and they've maybe got a blade number 1 or whatever, you just say, yeah, he looks great.
If you think of Andre Agassi, the tennis player, he looks absolutely wonderful. Sinead O'Connor looked fantastic, I thought, with her head shaved. But they have fabulous eyebrows, and the eyebrows are very important, in fact.
Right. Now, Shay has had the procedure. You've had the procedure, Paul. Will you talk us through exactly, before we have a look at the actual surgical operation, maybe you can talk us through that when the time comes, but generally speaking, what's happening?
Pat, if you consider somebody who is bald, they've nothing on top, but the hair around the back and sides is immune from the balding process, and it's been discovered that if you shift that hair onto the front of the head or the mid-scalp, it'll grow there for the rest of the person's life.
So even if people are almost completely bald up here, the hairs in the back of their neck will always stay.
Correct.
That's always been the case.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard of plugging techniques before, and you can actually see people who've had plugs, and we can show a shot of plugs, which don't convince me. What you do is not plugs. These
Absolutely.
are plugs now.
Yeah, I would never have performed hair transplantation if this was the standard. We take every single hair follicle on its own. There's probably 40 hair follicles in each one of those plugs.
Each clump?
Each clump of hair. And that's old-fashioned technology. And I get a lot of men now who are very traumatized by this. And they come back in, and there's a huge amount we can do to help them in repairing it and make it invisible.
All right, now we have some tape of the surgical procedure, and perhaps you'll talk us through exactly. This is Shay, by the way. Shay is having it done, yeah? So let's roll that.
We can't see Shay, but I'm removing a small piece of skin from the back of the hair, from the back of the head. And I didn't think we were going to show this, Pat. It's not as gruesome as it looks, I can assure you.
Glad I didn't see that.
And Shay assures me he didn't feel any pain whatsoever.
No.
The piece of skin that we remove is then dissected into tiny little slivers. And then, as you can see there, each individual hair follicle is being removed from the sliver. And then each of those is prepared. And then they're placed, these are the little hair follicles just before we
individual hair follicles?
There's an average of 2 hairs per follicle. And they're indistinguishable. You can't notice it at all.
Looked like Andre Agassi there.
And were you feeling any pain at all, Shay?
No, not a bit, Pat. My head was like a block of wood, I have to say. I didn't feel a thing. I was actually watching some DVDs while I was going for a snooze there. But in one part of it, Maurice had said to me, he watched something on the DVD. I watched 2 movies, I think, did I?
That's right, yes. Yeah. It's completely painless. No pain at all.
All right, and the result is what we can see in Shay. How many individual follicles then did you transplant, or typically would you transplant?
Our average case now is probably about 2,500 hair follicles, which will be over 5,000 hairs. And that can take anything up to 10 hours to do, and a team of 14 people working on the patient. This is absolutely meticulous, very, very precise surgery.
Now, what happens to those hairs when they're transplanted? I mean, do they invariably take, or could some of them just die?
98% of the hairs we've shown in tests will grow very, very good quality hair. You'll always lose a few. It's like transplanting rose trees.
Yeah. And what about the initial thing, when they go in first? I mean, hair is part of what I think they call your extraskeleton, like your fingernails.
That's correct.
And in fact, your hair is dead. You don't feel anything if you cut your hair.
Absolutely.
So do the hairs die off and grow again, or what happens?
When we put the roots in underneath the skin, there's some hair protruding from the skin. That hair will then separate after about 3 weeks, and the person looks absolutely the same as they did the day they came into us. There's no scar tissue, there's nothing whatsoever visible. And then about 2 months later, the new hair starts to grow, and it's there for the rest of their life.
All right. And that's a promise?
Absolutely, we guarantee that. Yes.
It just doesn't go away because it comes from a part of the scalp that's
immune
retains.
to the balding process. That's correct.
I mean, if the hairs in the back get grey, the hairs that you transplant will become grey in time.
That's right. And Pat, we haven't found a solution to grey hair yet.
I wish, but there you go.
I hope not.
Shay, are you
I
happy?
hope not.
Oh, your business now would ruin his business. Are you happy, Shay?
I'm really happy. I mean, you know, it is a confidence thing, and I don't know whether we've all spoken about it, but I mean, you know, for me, in the business that I'm in, you know, the feel-good factor for me is just amazing. You know, people don't notice it at the start because it's something that takes a little bit of time. But then they start to notice a few things. Because you're not looking too bad today. Not a bad-looking bloke,
a bit like the James Nesbitt shots we showed
Yeah.
earlier. I mean, if you saw them separately, you'd say, yeah, there's a difference between those two shots.
Yeah.
It's only when you put them together you realise
Exactly.
the hair makes a huge difference. Paul, how about you?
As Shay said, the feel-good factor is unbelievable.